So these were initially designed for what we call our local advisory councils. We do an update every year. We've kind of switched up how we do the update. A lot of times we've gone around and driven to each county. Of course, in this time, that is not necessarily in-person meetings everywhere. Is not necessarily something anyone's doing right now. So decided to do them virtually this year, just to update anyone that we wanted or that wanted to listen. And so we invited our local advisory councils, which when Tennessee Promise passed in 2015, it was a requirement that every county come up with what is called a local advisory council, which is appointed by the county mayor. It just has people intended to help tell tnAchieves or the partnering organization in that county what works best for the people in their local community. So we know that what works for Lewis County students is different than what works for Davidson County students. However, we do not live in Lewis County, so we rely on the local community to tell us, give us feedback, and then also to help us recruit mentors each year. So this year we, since we were doing them virtually, also decided to extend the invitation to all of our external stakeholders. So we have, we invited our local advisory councils, all of our mentors, all of our post-secondary partners, and any other community partners to each of these that we'll be doing throughout the week in our 90 counties. So just to kind of give you guys an overview, and a lot of this, but tnAchieves is a private 501c3 partner directly with the state to facilitate Tennessee Promise in 90 of the 95 counties. So we work with, we have worked with over 440 students since we started in 2008, just in Knox County, and obviously expanded since then. Also have served 71,000 volunteers since we began, and we currently work with over 600 high schools in Tennessee. That will be changing moving forward with the Ayers Foundation taking over some counties, including Lewis County. So it'll decrease a little bit, but also we work with 67 eligible post-secondary institutions across the state. So just sort of an overview with a map showing where tnAchieves is currently running. So our main components that we talk about everywhere we go, and what we really focus on are first our last dollar scholarship. So that's what most people know when they hear Tennessee Promise or tnAchieves, is that last dollar scholarship that allows any student in the state to go to community, technical, or some four-year institutions free of tuition and fees. So that's one of the biggest components of the program, but some other things that we really focus on and spend a lot of time doing are our volunteer mentor program. So any student who applies gets assigned a volunteer mentor. We have community service component that we've had since the beginning. So our board chairman is a Boy Scout and feels very strongly about the community service component, and we're super proud of our community service and how many hours our students have facilitated across the state and given back. We're trying to really foster that giving back to your community mentality with our students. And what we find is that 96% of the students say they enjoy whatever they did with community service. So they're really starting to appreciate what they're doing and giving back to the community that's giving to them. So we feel that that's super, super important, and are happy that it has continued as we've grown. Another component that we have is our summer programming. So about 80% of the students that tnAchieves serves do not graduate high school, college ready. So they need learning support classes in either reading, writing, or math, or all three. So we designed a few summer programs that help students in this situation if they're willing to give us some time in their summer after their high school graduation. So we've got a summer bridge program that's offered at all of our community colleges. And that's a 3-week, we describe it to the students as an academic boot camp. So it's intended for students who don't test into college level classes. They get instruction in reading, writing, and math. And then at the end of that program, they have the opportunity to test out of those classes that they might need learning support in. It's been highly successful. 89% of the students who participate either test out of the classes that they need learning support or they improve their test scores. So some of them are starting with a really low ACT score and need a review regardless, and will probably need that learning support class. So we don't anticipate everyone testing out, but to improve and feel more prepared for college after that 3 weeks is really our intention. And then we've got a summer institute program. So this is only offered right now in Memphis. We do hope to expand it across the state, but it's a 10-week program typically. This year it was only 6 weeks because we did a hybrid model. So potentially shortening that program moving forward. It's a tough sell to ask high school students to give up 10 weeks of their summer. But what it does is it offers 6 college courses. So the students who sign up for Institute take all of their learning support classes in addition to 3 college level classes. So they start their college career with 9 college credit hours under their belt. It's been 100% successful. So we have a small number that participate. This year it was 29. But those that do participate have all the high impact practices, tutoring, cohorting, lots of individualized attention to help these students really become prepared for college classes and get credit in their college under their belt to start college. So
I have a question. I just have a quick question for you, Jackie. What is the third class? Because normally when you have learning support classes, you have composition and math. What is the third class that they have?
Summer or academic success, college success.
College, okay, because that's only, that's why I was confused, because that's only 1 credit.
I was just going to ask, I think it's 1 credit.
It is.
At like half of the colleges, and it's 3 credits at the other half. So
gotcha.
That differently. Yeah, it's 3
okay
credits.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then our final component is our complete program. So this is our proactive coaching model that was designed 3 years ago in response to seeing that our highest need student. So for us, what we see when we look at our data every year is that our lowest income students are always the ones that are falling behind, regardless of their academic background or regardless of their geographical background or ethnicity. It's always the income that really stands out as something that really we need to focus on those students. So we work with our lowest income students individually with full-time coaches that reach out to these students at least once a month from their first semester of college all the way through until they get that post-secondary credential. So this is a lot more hands-on than our mentor program. Our mentor program is really designed more on the access side and getting more students to realize they can go to college. But this is more about helping students complete once they get there. You'll see in the box on the right says we believe in the power of communication. That is an understatement. If you are signed up for any of our emails, you know that we overly communicate as much as we can. We send 10 million emails a year and 6 million text messages to our students. So in addition to the reminders for any deadline, we're sending individualized reminders for deadlines and for applying and for registering, but also weekly emails just explaining where a student should be in the process of going to college and completing. So huge component of the program is communication. Spoke a little bit about reach earlier. We work in 90 counties. 74 of those counties are identified as rural, as the Center for Economic and Business something identified by the state as rural, are identified as at risk or distressed counties. And then we work with, as I mentioned, over 600 high schools, 67 colleges, and almost 80% of our students do enroll at a community college. The other 21% are pretty much evenly split between the TCATs, which is the Tennessee College of Applied Technology, and the four-year colleges that do accept Tennessee Promise. When we look at our success rates and our metrics, things that we review each year, we're a highly data-driven organization. You can see that we work with 89% of total high school seniors across our 90 counties. So we ask our counselors how many high school seniors there are and look at the number of applicants that they have from their school, and almost 90% of them each year apply. So we have a lot of counselors that just have every student apply for Tennessee Promise, which is what we encourage. It's oftentimes a backup program. We know 100% of the students are not going to go to a community college or a Tennessee Promise eligible institution, but for them to have the communication in general, everything we send is applicable to any college a student would go to. So we really encourage counselors to have the majority of their students sign up. So 89% of high school seniors do register for Tennessee Promise. When you look at all first-time, full-time freshmen at Tennessee community colleges, 78% of them are Tennessee Achieves students, so students who did apply to Tennessee Promise. And then when you see the number of students who graduate from Tennessee community colleges, 86% of those graduates are Tennessee Promise applicants as well. 56% of the students who go into college with Tennessee Promise are eligible for a federal Pell Grant. So they might be eligible for a full federal Pell Grant. Some may be eligible for partial. The Pell Grant is need-based scholarship. So a lot of our students, about a quarter of our students, don't receive any funding from Tennessee Promise. They still go through the entire process, have a coach, work with mentors, but don't receive funding from Tennessee Promise. But 56% do receive some federal funding. 40% of the students that we serve are first-generation college students. So really changing the trajectory of their family moving forward. So really something we measure each year, because that's something that I think will make a long-term impact. And then 51% of our students are majoring in health sciences and STEM-related fields. Always a question we get, because STEM-related fields are obviously very important to many people right now. So the Tennessee Promise, as far as costs are concerned, Tennessee Promise annually for having 3 cohorts in. So it is a 5-semester scholarship. So each fall we can have, like this fall, we will be working with students from the class of 2019, 2020, and 2021. $32 million is spent annually on the Tennessee Promise scholarship. That's just for the tuition and fees. And then $2.5 million is spent as our annual operating budget with Tennessee Achieves to facilitate that program. Any questions about any of that before I get into Lewis County specifics? Okay, so a couple of our benchmarks that we look at, as I mentioned earlier, is community service, and then another is FAFSA file rate. So FAFSA file is that free application for federal student aid. Statewide, 86% of applicants complete the FAFSA by the February deadline. Typically February, it's, I feel like, pushed back each year, but at some point in February, it's due for Tennessee Promise students, 86% across the state. And in Lewis County, 77% completed the FAFSA. So a lot lower than the statewide average. However, for a lot of states across the country, 50% is really great. So 77 is not too bad, but we do have some work to do in Lewis County to make sure that most of our students are completing that FAFSA by the deadline. The more students that complete it, the more federal funding they may be eligible for. So we really think it's important that the majority of students complete the FAFSA and work with the counselors, work with the post-secondary institutions to try to give opportunities for students. We also host virtual FAFSA nights and FAFSA help sessions individually with students and parents. So we're doing everything we can, but trying hard to get that rate up moving forward. So I mentioned over 3 million hours of community service hours statewide since we launched in 2008. It's actually over 3.3 million with our last deadline in July. In Lewis County alone, over 5,600 hours completed by Lewis County students. Another metric we continually look at, both from a statewide perspective and a county level perspective, is college going rate. So as you can see here, the college going rate increased dramatically in 2015 when Tennessee Promise passed, and has since crept up until the last few years. Huge impact with the pandemic affecting college going rates. There's just so much unknown and so many students not knowing if college is the right decision right now, trying to make that decision. So I think now more than ever, it's so important that we get in front of students and explain that it is the right move for them. But it is a really uncertain time. And so there's a lot of people going through that challenge, but the college going rate did decrease a lot from 2019 to 2020, from almost 62% to 57%. In 2019, Lewis County was also at 57%. So they haven't released the by-county college going rates yet, but Lewis County, I anticipate, is probably decreased as the statewide average did for that year.
One of the things that we have noticed, especially in our rural counties, is that with the high schools being virtual, these students are going out and getting jobs. And when they're making these bigger hourly rates that are being put out there now, it's a lot less attractive to go to school when you can be making money working 40 hours or more a week.
Absolutely. So
that's really impacted it.
It is certainly making a big shift. And when you're getting that paycheck at age 17 or 18, it's really hard to see that would be the same paycheck for potentially the rest of their lives, versus if they got a college degree, that could increase. But it's a hard sell sometimes.
The other problem we found is that with them being virtual, the high school counselors are not able to touch them as much as they do when they're on campus all the time. And so that has been a huge challenge across the board too. And I'm sure you guys have noticed that and gotten that feedback too.
Yeah, just being able to get a hold of them. And for us, it's when we're working with counselors, they have so many other challenges right now. Like, these kids aren't logging in for their English class, let alone listening to what they have to say about Tennessee Promise. So obviously we are taking a back seat to them completing high school. So there's so many challenges right now. And I definitely feel for those people working in the high schools. And we see the challenges, but know that they see it even more every day, and with the students that they know personally so well. So it's definitely not a fun challenge to be having, and it doesn't seem to be over anytime soon. So we'll see how those shifts progress. The biggest measurements that we use when we're looking at outcomes and looking at student progress once they actually get to college. So we talked about them going to college, but then once they get there, if we could just have them all complete, that would be a different story. But we also have the challenge of retention and graduation. So statewide, we have over 60,000 students apply each year. In Lewis County, it's about 100. 31 of those students in Lewis County go to college with Tennessee Promise. That doesn't mean 31 go to college. As we just saw on the last slide, 58% of students go to college, but 31 go to a Tennessee Promise institution. So the other ones chose to go to a four-year institution or out of state or a non-Promise eligible institution. But of those 31 students, 77% are retaining to their next fall. So of those that start in the fall, 77% retain to the following fall, which is 10% higher than our statewide average across the board. With Tennessee Promise students, 67% are retaining fall to fall. So that's really great for Lewis County. But then when you get to our 3-year graduation rate, it's the same as the statewide average. So more students are coming back for that second year, but then more students are dropping off before they actually graduate in 3 years. When you look at the retention numbers and graduation numbers, statewide, 67%, as I mentioned, is what we see for all Tennessee Promise students. However, which doesn't sound great. Clearly, we still have work to do in the retention. We would love that number to be at least in the 70%. But when you compare it to first-time full-time freshmen at community colleges, retaining at 53%, we are showing that some of the things that we're putting in place and the holding students accountable is working. So 14% higher than the statewide average for first-time full-time freshmen. And then when we look at all of our students, any student that applied to Tennessee Promise that went anywhere, regardless of Promise eligibility, those students are retaining at 74%. So higher, but a lot of those students are also going to institutions that maybe typically have higher retention rates in general. The state looks at graduation rates in 6-year increments. So when you look at first-time full-time freshman graduation rates, if you're looking at the THEC fact book, so Tennessee Higher Education Commission, their fact book, they don't look at 3-year graduation rates, they only look at 6 years. So to compare apples to apples, we look at both. We look at 3-year graduation rates and 6-year graduation rates. First-time full-time freshmen at community colleges graduate with 35% of them in 6 years. For tnAchieves students, it's 51%. So again, a lot of work to do, but still showing significant improvement from the state average. And then when you look at the programming, some of the things that we've put into place and compare retention for students who participate in these programs versus those who don't, we have the first year retention for those who participate in the summer programs that I was talking about earlier, retain at an average of 34% higher than their peers. For students who are being coached by the complete model, so that proactive complete model, they are retaining 23% higher than their peers. And then our newest program is a program called Knox Promise. So it's very similar to our complete coaching model. It's students who are getting one-on-one coaching each month from an assigned coach, but in Knox Promise, it's every student, regardless of their income. And then they also have the opportunity to get a completion grant. So this is sometimes referred to as emergency funding, but it's for students who are financially in need and need a little bit more support than just their tuition. So it could help pay for rent or transportation or books. So a lot of different things that those completion grants cover. But the students that participate in that program are retaining 42% higher than their peers. The state actually just approved completion grant funding, a pilot for this year across the state. So we have a small amount of funding that we are offering to students across the state, not just in Knox County, to facilitate emergency grants, or what we call completion grants, across the state. So hopefully, since we're seeing such great success with it in Knox County, we will also see that success across the state and be able to continue to fund that moving forward. Right now, it's just a pilot and actually being sent out today to students. So we'll see how many students take advantage of that opportunity. So tnAchieves mentors, to bring it back to what I was talking about earlier in the presentation, our mentors are really what we think of as the heart of our program. They serve as task managers, resources and encouragers. We advertise it to people in the community as a 12-hour commitment annually, and are currently in the process of recruiting mentors. They're a task manager in the fact that they make sure students know about their deadlines. So in addition to the communication that we're sending, mentors work individually with their students to make sure that they're aware of all their critical deadlines to maintain Promise eligibility. They're a resource, not in that they know all the answers to all their questions. I don't even know all the answers to the questions our students call and ask us. Today, I was trying to help a student with a registration issue, and I don't even know the answer. So we're certainly not expecting our volunteer mentors to know all the answers, but to know where to get them. So to reach out to us or to reach out to the college and work with the student through whatever they need to navigate through in the college access process. And then the most important piece I would think of a mentor is encouragement. So a lot of times our students don't have someone at home that's encouraging them to complete their post-secondary credential and need someone to just be a cheerleader for the students. So being there to encourage the student to work through the challenges that they face throughout their journey as a college going student. In 2022, our mentors will be a little bit different than they have been in the past. So in 2021, we went completely virtual. Prior to that, it was all in-person meetings at the high school and with the students at the colleges. This year, we're doing sort of a hybrid where mentors can choose what they want to do. So we'll still have our virtual mentoring platform, but also opportunities to meet in person and doing some open houses at the colleges and things to offer opportunities for mentors and students to get together face to face too. So there's a lot of options. So if you are a mentor, please think about doing it again this year. Or if you know anyone, that's obviously something that we would encourage you to share because we are in the process of recruiting mentors. And then our next step, so tangible things that you guys can do in your community to help us becoming a mentor. I said this, forgetting that Lewis County is going to the Ayers Foundation, so they don't use volunteer mentors as they have a paid full-time staff member that serves as the mentor to each of the students, but all of the surrounding counties to Lewis do still need mentors. So happy to talk to you guys about those opportunities. And you can apply on our website, tnAchieves.org, and choose which county you want to work with. The other thing, we're always willing to come to any community and what we say, talk to anyone who will listen to us about sharing the story of Tennessee Achieves and what it is to be a mentor. And then telling anyone you know about Tennessee Promise. So the application for the class of 2022 is live. We are pushing it directly through the counselors and through all the means of communication that we know to do. But if you know students who are in the class of 2022, they do have to apply. And if they miss the application deadline in their senior year, they're not able to apply later. So it's something that's super important. It takes about 10 minutes. It's really just asking for contact information, but the application is live until November 1st. So those are sort of tangible next steps and opportunities that we are asking our stakeholders to assist with. So that is all of the data I have for you today. We have so much more that we could just bore you to death with. So if you have any questions or want to get into any more details about anything, I'm happy to look at things for you. But I'm glad that you guys joined today. Do you have anything that might be a burning question that you want to get off your chest before we wrap up?
No, a lot of good data and information. Thank you very much.
Good, you're welcome. Well, thanks for joining, and we'll be posting all these on our website, so we have them by every county. So if you're interested in any other data, it will be on there after this week. So, but thank you again for coming today, and I hope you guys have a great week and a happy rest of your Monday.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks. See ya.
Bye.